Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Mysteries Unknown. I'm really excited about tonight's podcast. I know I always say that, but I really am tonight because I've got a guest on. His name is Steve, and Steve is a former corrections officer and a veteran, but he had an encounter in Camden, Arkansas. Now, I went to Police Academy in Camden. I'm very familiar with that episode, so when he talked to me about it and told me this where he had the encounter, it really got me intrigued. And we're going to let him jump into that story in just a minute. It's a really cool, well, I say cool, it's a very scary story. But if you have a mystery or something you would like to share with me, you can reach me by email at video@jscreativear.com. Steve, welcome to the show.
Man, I appreciate you having me on. I really do. It's good to go ahead. This is my therapy, brother. This is my therapy to kind of get this off my chest because it's been so many years. And I've been asked to do other podcasts, and it's just been a great therapy for me because once you hold something in for 45 years, it just, eats you up from inside.
Well, it definitely is, and that's my hope with this podcast is exactly that, is to give people a safe place, because that's really hard to hold something like that in. But why don't you go ahead and bring us back to this encounter? I know it happened several years ago, but start at the beginning and just tell us what happened.
Best way to start this out first is to say I never really believed that these things existed prior to this event. I was as skeptical like anybody else. However, seeing is believing, and I definitely believe now today. This happened 45 years ago, a little over 45 years ago, in 1975. Just went ahead and PCS down from Fort Benning, Georgia. I was in the military, and I PCSed to Fort Polk, Louisiana, from Fort Benning, Georgia. Was attached to the 1st 61st Infantry Battalion over there, and we were just getting it activated. And my first experience in Louisiana, so getting used to all of it out here. One of my partners was from outside of Camden, Arkansas. And so one day he just said, "Hey, why don't you come up here for a weekend, stay with my family up in the farm?" We got a farm outside of Camden, about 10 miles out in the woods. And we were used to the woods. The military, we stay in the woods, especially for infantry. So we jumped on it, went over there, about a 4.5-hour drive from post to the farm. It's about a 250-acre farm, good sized little farm over there. He had a country family that was great. I'm talking about just wonderful. His granny cooked. I mean, she was amazing at cooking, and that hooked me right there. And if I'd been 30 some odd years older, I'd probably gone with her, but instead of his sister. But I met his sister. We became an item pretty quick. And that was it right there. And from that point, every weekend I was going up there and stay up there with him. Her daddy, Bobby, he was a great guy. And I'd go up there to help him work the cattle. I'd help him go up there and work, build fence, and whatever we had to do around the farm to help him, tend to the cattle, caught the hogs, everything. I love that kind of stuff. That deep out in the woods like it was great. And getting away from post, hey, let me tell you something. On weekends, you want away from post because if you're still on post in the military and they need detail, guess who they call? So I made sure I was out. Any case, so it was one particular Friday night. We had finished supper. We was hunkered down inside the den. It was an amazing supper. About 9:30 at night, we're watching TV. Me and her daddy, her mama, two brothers, and her granny was in the kitchen washing dishes. All of a sudden, she screams. Man, I'm talking about, they say that, you can hear everything you want through a mobile home walls. Well, through these old houses, man, you can hear the same. It's just like paper, So she screamed, we jumped and ran down the hallway. And of course, being a soldier, I was the first one there, and I went ahead and got in that kitchen, and I almost cut a flip over Granny. She's on the floor, and she's pointing at the kitchen window over the sink saying, I seen it again. And she was just hysterical. Well, naturally to me, in my military mind, I assumed she seen an intruder trying to break in the house. Evidently, her family knew what it was, but didn't let me on. And that's fine. Well, I mean, what their reasons, I understand. But I wish I would have had an idea what I was fixing to go after. Any case, so we ran out back. Her daddy said, let's arm up. Got some weapons off the racks in the hallway. We went out back. Her brothers went to the right. Me and her daddy went to the left. Of course, the girl stayed inside and tended to Granny. As we went, It was 9:30 at night, like I say, but it was a very bright moon. And you know how that moon gets when it's like daylight. You can see everything almost like daylight. It's just, I mean, a little bit dimmer, but you know what I'm saying. We got out there. I remember seeing the cattle clear across the pasture. They were all hunkered up on the far end of the pasture. They were cutting up, so I knew that meant they was pretty much had some kind of a predator out there. It could have been a bobcat, could have been a coyote, who knows what. But what caught me off guard and got me to really thinking was I heard his 3 blue ticks he had for hunting dogs. They were under the house whining. And I'm talking about dogs that would chase anything, son. You know, if there's been an intruder, they've been cutting through them woods, going ahead and making a racket. You could have heard them a mile away. They were under the house whining. These deer trained to go ahead and run deer and everything. Now I got my military mind's going, what in the world are we after? Because if it's not an intruder, it's something big and bad. And I don't know what, I had no idea. So I said, Bobby, the dogs. He said, don't worry about that. Just keep close behind me. Well, okay, I'm picking up something was up. We're getting close to the corner post. We had just built a fence not too long before that was dividing fence. And it divided the pasture from a 50-acre swamp he had, and he didn't want the cattle going into there. So we built that fence. It was made of, I believe it was 4-foot cattle panel with a stretch of barbed wire over it, so about 5 foot high. As we got close to that corner post, I remember I was catching a stench, and it was a pretty rough one. I mean, it was like matted urine and something dead, as best I can describe it. It make you want to gag. We got close to that post, and that's when we jumped something up. Something in the thicket over there started going, turning and burning, son. And to me, it sounded like a 2,000-pound rhino because it was doing some damage in that thicket. I'm thinking, what in the world is that? And all of a sudden, this is the point where my whole world changed. Everything I was taught to believe existed in this world came to a sudden stop right then. This thing jumps the fence, and it lands down about 25 foot from us. This isn't 100 yards away. This isn't 150 foot away. This is about 25 foot. We counted the next morning when we did a recon. It landed right there in the pasture, flank of us now. We saw it side view. It stood up. It was flank of us. And it stood up, and this thing stood up, it seemed like forever. When it stood up on full length, it was about 8 foot tall. Every bit 8 foot tall, covered in long, stringy hair. It was dark hair. Can't tell you it was black or brown because, I can tell you it was dark. Flank of us, we can see its profile like a huge man's face. It didn't have a snout, so I knew it wasn't a bear. It had long arms. I remember the huge hands, and it was covered in hair. Like I said, very muscular, very, very powerful build. And then this all happened in a matter of seconds now. I'm just trying to give you the picture of what we're looking at. Then all of a sudden it just took off like a rocket. It never looked at us. It never tried to attack us or anything. It left. It ran. And it ran across the pasture, which gave me the inclination this thing's as scared of us as we're scared of it. Now, understand, I got a 12 gauge. Bobby had a 410 and a flashlight. If this thing attacked us, them 2 guns wouldn't have done nothing but got us killed. I promise you right now. But it ran from us. It ran across the pasture. And when I say ran, I'm talking about running like this, like a track star. Arm swing. It was straight up, running like a man. Didn't fall to all fours at any time that we saw. It stood up like a man and ran like a man. Now, this is what got me thinking, okay, this ain't no bear. I have seen bear before. I've seen grizzlies and I've seen black bears and such. When they stand up, and they can stand up straight like a man, and they can walk like a man, no question about it, but they cannot run like a man. All right, a bear has to fall to all fours. Its hips and leg structure won't allow it to run. Like a man, it has to go to all fours. This thing ran like a track star. Well, as it goes across the pasture, it went ahead and it crashed through the cattle gate. That might not sound like too much, but when you understand this cattle gate, we built out of 2x6s, oak 2x6s. And if you know anything about oak, it's a very hard and heavy wood. You're going to break that, you the man. I'm going to tell you that right now. It took a D9 dozer to go through that thing, and it shattered them 2x6s, shattered them, twisted up that barbed wire. Next morning, we went out and did a recon. But in any case, As it went through that, I don't know why, if it hollered because of the fact that it got tore up by that barbed wire, or because it just let us know it didn't want us chasing it. I don't know. But it roared, and it roared a roar I ain't never heard in my life. Now, I live in the backwoods of Louisiana. I've lived out here now for dang near 40 years, out here in the backwoods of Louisiana. It is almost 6 miles out my back door to the next house through the woods. I hunt all these areas out here. And I'm used to hearing critters. I'm used to hearing coyotes, bobcats, panthers, you name it, owls of all kinds. I mean, we're used to hearing that. I've never heard anything like it to date. Never heard anything like that in the woods. It sounded like a lion, how a lion would growl, like real bassy type of a growl, and like an elephant. Boy, if you don't talk about that scaring you, what? So, I mean, that just made my hair and my neck stand up. And in any case, all this time, my mind's going in full gear, trying to figure out, what did I just see? What did I just look at? And I'm trying to rationalize. I'm a 19-year-old soldier, right? I'm 66 now, but I was a 19-year-old soldier. So as a youngster, I'm thinking, what? Anyway, Bobby was shook up, badly shook up. Boys come around the corner. They're his sons, my girlfriend's two brothers. They said, "Yellen, did you hear that? Did you hear that?" I said, "We've seen it." Well, they went ahead and they said, "Oh man, we got to calm down." We were just, I was like trembling. I was like, "What in the world is this, man?" We don't know. Well, that's when Bobby come clean a little bit. He said, I don't know what this is. How do I protect my family? I don't know what to do. It comes around here every once in a while, looking in the window at Granny. Now, it never tried to break in the house. It never tried to attack anybody. And the only damage ever done was that night when it went through the cattle gate. So he said, but we don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. When things calmed down a bit, went ahead and got the oldest brother, was about 6'4", tall, skinny fella. Got him to stand under the kitchen window because the house is on pilings now, not too far from a river. So they had it up on pilings. And just for scale, had him go ahead and reach up as high as he could and go ahead and touch that kitchen window if he could. Now, 6'4", full arm swing, he's probably touching about 7 foot fingertip, I would think. And he can barely touch the bottom rim of that kitchen window, which told me, perspective, this thing had to have been 8 foot tall or taller to look in that window like it did. Well, at that point in time, hearts are still beating. We're trying, adrenaline's running still, but we calmed down some, went in the house, see about Granny. Got inside there, she had calmed down a lot. We got inside there, boy, I'm talking about, I'm just, talking about the coffee pot is ready and I'm working on it. Trust me, I'm working, and I started working on it then. I didn't stop till the next morning, and I kept on. I asked Granny, Granny, look, I said, we seen this thing. She goes, you saw it? I said, yes, ma'am, we saw it. It was close. We did not see its face real well. We saw a profile as it stood up because it was flank of us, but we did not see its face straight on. You saw it looking in the window. She goes, yes, I did, several times. And I said, okay. Would you mind telling me what you seen? She goes, yes, it was like a huge man's face, rough skin, hair all around it, but not on the face, if that makes sense. Big red glowing eyes. And that was really a tripper for me, because red glowing eyes, that's, how do you explain that? That's a vampire, right? But I didn't doubt her. I did not doubt her. These are Pentecostal people here, and I was not about to doubt her. I mean, I know what I've seen, so I'm putting this together one piece at a time. Well, as we sat up that night, and of course, I'm going to tell you right now, there was no one sleeping that night. We all sat up around the coffee pot and the table, just drinking coffee and talking about this thing, trying to calm down, trying to go ahead and rationalize what it is. No one can really go up and say, this is back in 75. Understand, at that point in time, Bigfoot was a little bit, people were talking about it, because a few years prior to that, in 67, there was one seen up there in California, which was the popular thing, but no one really, made a comment about that. It was hush back then, taboo. So that was, we didn't even, we were just trying to figure out what this thing is. I asked Bobby, I said, Bobby, have you considered going ahead and contacting the forestry department, something like that, or, law enforcement? He said, no, oh, absolutely not. I don't want this getting out, because back then, they lived about 10 miles outside of Camden, and back then Camden was a small town back in 75. And their church and everything else, they did not want the word getting out. People would, to think they're crazy. And I can understand that. I can appreciate that. So back in that time and day, it wasn't like today where people were talking about this all the time. Now, all of a sudden, back then, it was taboo. So he said, please don't talk about this when you go back to the post. Don't talk about it. Please don't. I don't want the word getting out. I don't want us getting laughed at. I said, Bobby, don't worry about it. My mouth's sealed. And that was one of the reasons why I had my mouth shut for so many years. But anyway, the next morning, we decided to go ahead and pull recon and sun up. And went out there, and we went back to, to point of origin, back where this thing, we first jumped it up in the thicket, and where it jumped that fence. And the first thing we're going to look for is prints, of course, and hair in barbed wire. No hair in the barbed wire where it jumped the fence. We found the prints, though, of course, when it, hit the ground. That thing had to have been 700 or 800 pounds. Easy 700 or 800 pounds, as big as it was. Massive creature. When we followed the prints across the pasture going to the cattle gate. Now, we didn't have a ruler or anything else. So I used my own feet, and I went ahead and I put almost heel to toe, almost fit in one track. Now, that's a big critter right there, I promise you. And so I was like, what? I'm still in shock, As we went ahead and went on, followed the tracks, went to the cattle gate where it was shredded. I'm talking about shredded. Looked over to the side, went ahead and seen where the corner post was. When this thing crashed to the cattle gate, the raw power of this thing going through there jerked that corner post over. That's a telephone pole cut down, put about 6 foot in the ground. Okay, because your corner post, of course, is your stabilizer system for the fence. It pulled it over, didn't break it. It laid it down from that pressure, that thing, power going through there. And even went ahead and moved the squeeze chute. If you know what a squeeze chute is, where they put the cattle at when you go ahead and lock them in there to go ahead and get them branded or go ahead and cut their horns, whatever. It went ahead and pulled it, twisted it. That's a lot of power right there. Then we went on, of course, tracks went on and went through a big old, I mean, nothing but a sawtooth briar patch, huge. Them sawtooth briars were like this. We called them in the military. We went into them all the time in the woods, on bivouac and such, and we called them wait a minute vines. Because when you go through them and they grab a hole, they say, wait a minute, and you ain't going nowhere. So, any case, we didn't pursue it past that. But he harped on me, please don't talk about this, and I didn't. I went back to post, just everything in my mind going, these things are real. Oh my God, these things are real. And it changed everything. And what it caused me to do was doubt everything we were taught in public school to believe. I'm just telling you, the history books, it ain't there. Something's up. So it affected me a lot, and going ahead and I didn't ever talk about it to anybody. And for years and years and years and years and years, got married in 84 to my wife out here when I came out of the military in 81. Stayed here in Louisiana because I'm originally from Southern California. I stayed out here, love country life, love it in the woods. So we come out here, homesteaded out here in the woods outside of Maryville, which is a small town, about population about 500, okay, on Texas border. Any case, I hunted out here all the time. Her uncle, his name was Lewis Gill, great guy. He was about 75 years old at the time. We were hunting buddies. One day I said, Uncle Lewis, we've hunted all around here several times, done well, but I like to hunt about 10 miles from here in Anacoca Swamp. He looked at me, he said, no. He said, the old man said, no. He locked up quick, and he said, no. He said, I'm not going out there, haven't been out there since the 50s, and I ain't going back. You want to go, you go right ahead. Well, I figured because he's 75 years old, terrain is pretty rough over there, a lot of hills and ditches and hollers. And he said, no, it ain't the terrain. He said, to be honest with you, I seen something out there back in the 50s, and I ain't going back. It scared me to death. Well, I got my curiosity up. Well, Josh, I was thinking, hey, man, I got to figure a way to bring this out without insulting him or, without pushing him away. So I said, Uncle Lewis, I said, you don't mind tell me, what did you see? He said, I ain't talked about it. I ain't told my brothers. I ain't told my niece, was my wife. He said, there's nothing, I'm crazy. I said, Uncle Lewis, if you'll tell me what you've seen, I'm going to tell you something. He said, all right. So he went ahead and he told me, he said, him and a trailer named Milton Hickenbottom, which is I knew him really well. He lived across the highway from us. I hunted with his sons. And Milton and Lewis about the same age. They grew up together out in these parts. And when back in the 50s, they was out there squirrel hunting. And they was sitting out there when it broke daylight. They noticed it was like a big tree out in a white sandbar across the creek. They thought it was a tree. It didn't move. And all of a sudden, this, when the daybreak broke, they seen this thing better, and it was not a tree. It was some kind of big old giant creature covered in long hair. And he said it didn't move. Then all of a sudden, it reared back, and it went out this roar. He said his hat almost come off his head. He went ahead. He said it turned around after it roared. It reached up. It had to grab the limb coming off the bluff above it. And then it went ahead and turned around, stepped up on the bluff, and took off. They waited a few minutes. He said, we wasn't going out there. We wasn't crazy. We waited for it to be gone. And they went out there, and they seen the prints in the sand, white sandbar. And we're stepped up on the bluff about 5 foot in the air, 5 foot high. So it had been pretty tall to do that. And then that limb, he said, coming off that bluff up there, that he grabbed was about 12 foot in the air, which meant that thing had to have been easy 10 foot tall. Easy 10 foot tall. So when he told me this story, he kind of spit it back into himself, and he said, I'm crazy. You think I'm crazy, son? You don't want to hunt me no more? I understand. If you don't want to hang around me no more, you think I'm a crazy old man. I said, Uncle Lewis, listen to what I'm telling you, son. I promise you ain't crazy. And that's when I told him my encounter. I want to take the pressure off of him. And this was helping me. First time in how many years I'm going to talk about it. But I opened up and I told him my encounter. That old man almost broke down and cried. He said, I ain't crazy. I ain't the only one. I said, Uncle Lewis, you're not crazy. They're being seen everywhere. So, in any case, from that point on, it was just big relief to him. And I felt good because now all of a sudden I released mine and he released his. And now together we're kind of like, wow. Well, I told my wife, and I told my kids. And my kids were a little more accepting than my wife was. Women tend to sometimes be, I hope no one gets mad at me for saying this, but sometimes they be more closed-minded than a fella. That's just the way it is. And so, and I can't expect her to, I can't. She didn't see it. So seeing was believing for me. But my boys, they were real open-minded to it. And they really, started to say, hey, man, yeah, because they've seen UFOs before in the sky. They can't explain, so. But in any case, me and my boys always had a close relationship, always. And matter of fact, my youngest son, he's a warden of the compound I retired from. And my older son, who just came out here, he plays in a band from Tennessee. So, they believe Pop, so 66 years old, and I ain't forgot a lick of it.
But that's a really incredible story. It's really scary. I know that area very well, and it is a very thick, wooded, lots of country, lots of things out there. And to have that kind of experience, there seems to be a common theme with these sightings where Bigfoot peeks in people's houses. They don't really, try to break in, but they do peek in and they look. And, it can kind of let them know that they're curious. With all that being said, and, what do you think Bigfoot is? But before you answer that, I do want to tell you thank you for your service with the sheriff's office and in the military. I appreciate what you do and did for our country. But what do you think Bigfoot is?
Well, I'm going to answer that real quick. Before I do, I want to say thank you for your service, Joshua, because law enforcement, brother, we're always there, watching each other's back, and that's what it's all about. What do I think this creature is? I believe it's a being. I've heard all kind of different comments. People think it's from another dimension. I'm not saying it's not. I don't know. Okay. I believe myself personally, it's a creature that just off the charts creature. They're finding creatures all the time that were either mythological, thought to be mythological, or extinct for millions of years, live and well today. They're finding them all the time. So this thing is avoided things, but I hear being seen, and I want to throw this in the mix real quick. You know, I do a lot of deer hunting, and I do a lot of squirrel hunting, hog hunting, rabbit hunting, and such. An animal in the woods. This creature is an animal, but it's also got some human characteristics to it as well. And being that said, a little bit of research I've done on them, they seem to be somewhat human, a little aspect of human there. That means they have some human intel, which puts them above the food chain in the sense of with other animals like a coyote or a bear or a panther, because they don't have human instinct. These creatures do. And being that said, it makes it the perfect creature. Why it's not being seen so much, only when it wants to be. And my sense on that is this, is that a human, having human intel, I believe it knows, it can see trail, it knows how to avoid those things. It knows how humans think because it thinks the same way we do. Only being part animal, it has the cunning, speed, the agility of an animal. So what happens then is, if you notice, whenever you go hunting, a deer, a squirrel, a rabbit will freeze. It'll stop. That's one of their camo abilities. It's not just hiding in the woods, it's blending in the surroundings. You know, we're taught in the military, camo, the best explanation of perfect camo is blending in your surroundings. That's what animals do. That's where camo came from in the military, was seeing how animals act. And they blend into their surroundings. They freeze frame. They freeze. Because we sense things as humans in the woods as what? Movement. If something's in the woods and it's blended in, we can't sense it until it moves and breaks form. And that's when we notice it. I believe these creatures are out there in these woods, and people who don't even believe in them are walking by them, driving by them, not even noticing them. The creatures are out there watching us. And I believe that with all my heart. So I believe they're part human. I believe they're an animal that just has been here all along, just has never been documented, like these other creatures they're finding all the time. Okay. The red eyes, I watched a show on Discovery Channel not too long ago. I seen it a couple of years ago. And it was a deep sea adventure where they went down about 14,000 foot in the ocean in one of them subs. And they were studying different sea life, and they found these fish, these strange fish down there at that depth that had red glowing eyes. And it showed them in the darkness like a beam of light coming out their eyes, red beam. And their eyes were red. And the commentator talked about how that was their X-ray vision, their night vision. They're able to see in the darkness, sense food, sense places of shelter, what have you. And so that is their night vision. I believe and he said, if sea creatures can have this kind of ability, what's to say that land-based creatures couldn't? Which right there emphasized on what Granny said when they had red glowing eyes. There you go. Maybe these things have night vision and they can see, and it's their sense of seeing in the dark. That's what I think it is. Not vampire or, whatever. I think that's just an ability they have. So, and if you notice other creatures being seen, they can't be explained, have red eyes too. So I believe that it's some kind of a night vision. That's my estimation of them.
That's a good answer. And I don't think anybody's going to know for sure 100% until somebody kills one or captures one. But it's a mystery. And I think that's what I like about it so much, is just the mystery behind it. But I can imagine, and you said it, that was a life-changing experience. But have you been back to the property? And also, if you could see one again, would you want to see one again?
I did go back several times on weekends after that event. We went over there, never talked about it. I mean, the family shut down. I didn't want to bring it up because they were adamant about not talking. So I never brought it up. We never talked about it after that. Did they see it during the week when I wasn't there? I don't know. I have no idea. I mean, it was my business and I wasn't going to ask. And I respected them. I didn't talk about it either. And the other question was what now?
If you could see it again, would you want to?
It may sound crazy to you. No, I wouldn't. I hunt these woods all the time. Every time I go out in the woods hunting, it's hunting season now. Matter of fact, bow season. And when I go out in the woods, it's always on my mind. What if I see one? Because I live so far out here in the woods. Now, if I had one friend of mine say, "Why don't you get a stick, go ahead and beat on a tree, and go ahead and call one up?" I said, "Partner, you don't understand. I didn't want to see the one I seen back in Arkansas, so I sure don't want to call one up." So no, I really don't. I studied them, but I just don't want to see one again. Why? Because these things are real. They're no joke. They're alive and they exist. People might say, "Hey, you know what? I don't believe that." That's fine. That's their opinion, and I respect their opinion. But I know what I've seen, and I can't deny what I saw.
No, I don't think that that's the wrong answer. I think that, I would feel the same way, because these things are massive, and if they want to get you, they're going to get you. There's not anything you could do about it. But I appreciate you coming on the show and sharing your story and getting that out there. Hopefully that kind of helps to get your story there off your chest, and I appreciate you doing that. But guys, if you have a mystery that you want to share with me or any kind of unknown story, you can reach me by email at video@jscreativear.com. And like I always say, stay prayed up. We'll see you in the next episode.